Welcome to the next instalment on the Quantum Leap business show going around the world. 24 hours. We've been at it since 8 o'clock this morning, and we finish at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, or 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, having travelled through the UK into the Americas and into APAC later on tonight. So ideas, inspiration. We've got over 60 different guests on the show. So Scott, my co-driver pilot, is probably going to put in the chat a copy of all the workshops and talks and interviews that are on a schedule for anybody that wants to grab another schedule. We've got people like Joe Foster, who was the founder of Reebok. So he took a little shoe shop in Bolton and turned it into a $4 billion brand. We've got Barry Cusack, who runs a $480 billion company. And surpassing all of that, we've got Warren Cass, who I've known for about 15 years. And Warren is local to the UK and has written the best-selling book on influence. And he's going to be delighting you all today with getting some selling certainty in digital in a changing world and selling the sizzle, not the sausage, or the other way around. Warren, over to you.
Well, first of all, stop it. With regards to some of the stuff we're going to cover, I just wanted to say a bit of housekeeping up front. I really like it when sessions are interactive. So today I'm going to present you with some ideas, and my style is quite conversational anyway. I'm a bit of a business generalist. So for most of you, for the industries that you touch on, chances are I've either got some connections or some insight to that industry too. And I like to personalize my content as much as I possibly can. So the more that you participate in the chat today, the more I might be able to respond and give you some very specific context. But I'm equally very happy to engage with you on social media afterwards, LinkedIn, etc., and see if we can help from there. So just let us move forward now. Can you all see my screen? You can. Now, interestingly, I just need to do one single bit of setup, which is my computer seems to always want to mirror my displays when I start clicking on PowerPoint, which is annoying because I like to see your faces. You're rather attractive people. So let me just see if I can get that sorted out. It doesn't look like I can, so I'm just going to do a straight presentation mode. So today I'm really talking about certainty, about how we sell it, and what it actually means in the kind of buying decision for your marketplace. And what I want to start with is a little bit of an insight from you about what attracted you to this session. Now, if you could use the chat feature so we can make this interactive, that would be fantastic. In fact, I'd like to ask a little bit more than what just attracted you to this session. If you could actually add your own LinkedIn profiles, it'd be great for you to connect with each other. That would be great. If you can tell me what drew you to this session, but maybe give us an insight as to what industry, what profession you're from. That would be great for me to, again, contextualize for you. So, John gave a quick introduction as to who I am. Yes, I wrote the book on influence, and I speak on this subject internationally. Of course, lockdown has impacted that whole industry. So like every industry, we've had to adapt a little bit in the last year and a half. But we have. One of the big things that I took a leap to was to create a brand called Hive Mind, which is essentially a business community of like-minded people who come together for critical feedback, critical thinking with each other. They're an incubator for each other's ideas. It's a support community. And I run that with another speaker called Warren. The only other Warren I know, funnily enough, happens to be my work wife. And we basically run masterminding and various workshops and events. And, Warren, like I, is a digital speaker. My focus tends more to be on positioning and context and the kind of psychological aspect of business. He's a digital ninja, so he's all about the mechanics and the metrics and the ways to amplify content and to do all of that. So that's a bit of context as to who we are. One of the things that we also do is run a series of workshops and a business accelerator, which covers these kind of key areas. So when I say I'm a generalist, it's because actually our experience, certainly we're working with other people's businesses and brands. touches on all of these areas. We look at their core, what they stand for, who they are. We look at the audience they serve and the context of their audience. We look at the business model they operate, but actually how they use that to communicate who they are and what they do. So whether it's just process orientated or whether it's actually the thing that the client works away and works within that framework. We look at the various propositions that they sell. So a model and a proposition aren't the same thing. The model can be quite broad and it can be an overall process, but within that model, you can have multiple propositions. So most of you hopefully have some sort of product staircase. So you can start to work with people at a low barrier to entry and maybe evolve them through your product suite. We then look at the way that they position themselves in marketing. And the word I don't actually like to use is the selling word. And we prefer the word nurturing. But that needs explanation on the model. So we use selling and then we tell people what the nurturing process is. That's a bit of an overview. Essentially, if you've heard me speak before, and I know a few of you have, then you'll know actually what's a really big subject for me is the subject of change. And actually, it's the last 20, 30, 40 years where change has been a curve like this. But in COVID times, I believe it's accelerated change yet again. In fact, a lot of the changes that we're seeing now with how people work with things like Zoom, etc., and even how organizations have now reduced their office space and allowed more and more people to homework and just come together periodically. I think these changes were inevitable. I think COVID has just accelerated the change. And so, some of the stuff which I might touch on today are the changes around technology behaviors and demographics. In fact, extending demographics to psychographics and thermographics, which I will explain the difference between those three moving forward, and why it's important to understand the audience that you serve. Okay, let us move on. So just as a bit of a recap on where we're at right now. So I appreciate it's an international audience. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the UK stats. So we've seen quite a bit of change. We've seen massive declines in revenue. By the way, this is a positive story. Ultimately, I'm just going to give you a bit of real context before we move forward. So UK SMEs saw a 28% decline in revenue in 2020. 82% of entrepreneurs and enterprises globally have cut hiring budgets. E-commerce accounted for 33.4% of all GB retail sales. Sorry, I've got somebody trying to get in. Just 7% of UK brands are seizing the opportunity to invest in more marketing. 60% of organizations have identified new processes to use post-outbreak. Professional messaging surges. And of course, all the brands that are proficient in those areas, stock market value, etc., has gone up. 34% of US 25 to 34-year-olds listen to a news-based podcast every month. So we've all become a little bit more interested in personal and professional development. And actually, the thing about podcasts now is everybody has the ability to go and be some sort of broadcast entrepreneur demonstrating expertise, etc. Facebook daily activity users increased, actually decreased in some demographics, interestingly enough, but increased overall. And 96% of US and UK social media users say they're engaging with influencers. So influencer marketing has become a thing, not just the space of the Kardashians and the consumer. There are now brands, like Analytica, for example, who kind of represent about 8,000 B2B influencers. And what's happening now is organizations are starting to understand that advocacy that comes from having an ambassador network, and they pay very well for it. In fact, a very good friend of mine is just signed a deal literally where all he's got to do is the occasional blog and flag waving, and it's a £60,000 a year contract to be an ambassador for a big brand in the accountancy space. And so, this whole influencer strategy is being embraced, but it's still potentially the realm of the small business too. And I'm more than happy to touch on that should you want to. I just wanted to give this. These were the stats, very, very recent. Actually, this is from about a month ago. As you can see, from a consumer confidence point of view, things have improved. As we come out of lockdown, people are a little bit more optimistic. And I just want to give this context. This is the last 20 years. So you can see from a consumer confidence point of view, whilst we're on the way up, it very much mirrors the recession from 2007, 2010. We're very much mirroring that, and you know, we're making our way out of it. So that's something to be happy about. From a business confidence point of view, there's also some positive news, albeit this is very much weighted towards manufacturing and retail. We are on our way up. You know, it's the first time in a little while we've had a positive rating, and to give it context, this is the past 20 years. So arguably, we're more confident now from a retail and manufacturing point of view than we have been for the last 20 years, judging by this information. So I think those that have survived are looking at the next journey that we're on rather positively. But that's about big business and retail. And so I'm really kind of curious how that fits from a small business point of view. So UK Small Business Index confidence measure has risen up to 27.3 from the minus in the last quarter. The index is at its highest since 2014. So again, there seems to be positivity. The source for there is the FSB. And there is a counter side to that. Okay, so what we have also are kind of high levels of mental stress. You know, this is happening all over the place. 1 in 6 people in the last week have experienced a common mental health problem. That doesn't mean they've got a mental health illness, but you know, it could be stress related, etc., etc. And the reason why I reference that is because these are the real figures around how business owners have been feeling in the last year. 21% of business owners feel anxious, 17% feel stressed, 15% feel worried, only 1 in 10 feel adequately supported. Now, this may not ring a bell for you, but I pretty much guarantee this is, you know, some of your marketplace and some of your customer base might be feeling this way. So I'm going to be coming on to this kind of state of apathy that we seem to find ourselves in right now, and how your marketplace may be feeling and what you can do to create certainty with them and to help reassure. We are definitely going to be coming on to that. But you know, this is something that we have to be mindful of. And there are various reasons why small business owners feel concerned right now. You know, customers are staying online; they're not necessarily coming into store. Regardless of whether you've been vaccinated or even prior to that, staying in caused a certain level of anxiety. Going out caused a certain level of anxiety, right? So we've got this constant state of stress right now, and everybody's feeling it. They want to know when their revenues are going to return to the normal levels, like the time it's going to take to rebuild customer bases if their customers have survived the last 18 months. Some of them have been having to make staff redundant, you know, or they've at least curbed their growth. They may have people on furlough and can't afford to bring them back. There's a lot of stress going on in small businesses, regardless of whether it relates to sales. And all of this is context, okay? And so coming on to the subject of today, I really want to kind of touch on certainty and what certainty looks like. And for me, there's a few different component parts of certainty. There is the context of the prospect, i.e. the person that you're selling to, and how they feel. We're going to touch on all of these in more depth. There's the presentation of the seller, in this case, hopefully you as the business owner, entrepreneur, or marketing salesperson within the organization. And there are the external factors which are utterly beyond our control, but will still help or factor when it comes to making a buying decision. Okay, so these are the aspects of certainty that I want to cover today. So let's start with the context of the prospect. So if you've heard me speak before, this image might be familiar to you, because one of the things I talk about in a lot of depth is communication and the communication model which we all experience. Because unless we understand communication, it's really hard for us to actually understand our messaging, our positioning, etc. So all of us as human beings, we receive information through all of our senses, and basically what we do is we run that then through a load of filters in our own heads. We map it against all of our map of reality, our biases, our experiences, our values, our beliefs, and ultimately that will in turn affect the way we think, which in turn affects our physiology, and essentially how we perceive the person in front of us, if that's a salesperson in this case. And from a prospect's point of view, unless you are really good at understanding context, i.e. asking great questions and really getting to know them first. What you're essentially doing is letting your map of reality dictate the sales process and not necessarily creating the conditions where people buy. And that's one of the biggest things I want to kind of get across to you today. So for every single prospect you talk to, there is a situational context. And it's very easy for us to assume also that we're the only choice on the marketplace, or even our direct competitors are the only solution for them. You know, for example, I could be nervous about home security or feel nervous in my own home, but the solutions to that could be really varied. I could just get a guard dog. I could do martial arts lessons. In the US, I could buy a gun. I could get my doors and windows reinforced. I can get a decent alarm system, CCTV. There are a number of solutions to the one problem. And the biggest mistake that many businesses make is that they believe their own hype and their own USP and think they're the only potential solution on the marketplace. You know, if you're a CCTV company, you compete with CCTV companies. I would argue you potentially compete with all the others too. And unless you take the time to understand the context of your buyer, you don't necessarily know who you're competing with and how to, you know, feature the advantages of your particular solution. Not enough people or business owners really try to understand the pain and the gain from their proposition. I'm going to come on to what a value proposition properly looks like today and why it's important to reinvent and to re-examine your own value proposition. They forego the relationships. I actually think we're all a little bit better nowadays. I think marketing has had a humanification to it, which is certainly helped. Even big corporate brands now are trying to create a little bit more of a relationship in their marketing, as opposed to the broadcast marketing that we're used to seeing. Budgets will be a factor. Operational considerations, you know, for example, if I implement this change, is it going to create more work for me? Do I have the expertise and the resources to see it through? How long is it going to take? And was that going to impact my day-to-day customer delivery right now? All of these are considerations which will be going through their mind. And unless we have answers to these questions and reassurances and take the time to create certainty, chances are they're going to delay a decision-making process. So coming back to this value proposition. So some of you may have seen a value proposition canvas before. I'm just going to give it a quick explanation because I think it's really important to re-examine. So the value proposition canvas is the simple premise that your customer has jobs that they must do, work that they must do. And our job is to understand how we can either improve the work, and those gains they may not be aware they exist or your solution exists. But our job is to educate them on where we can help them make gains. And it's also to solve pain points, to solve problems. And we do that by observation. And the real challenge that we have today is over the last 18 months, most people have been focused on bringing in new business and not necessarily going out and talking to their existing customer base and understanding the challenges that they face right now in order to maybe adapt solutions in order to help. So it's really key that we talk to our customers and we talk to our marketplace and understand the current challenges. And then our job is to design products and services which are gain creators or pain relievers, right? And when we do that, we create a fit, and that's by design. So it starts with observation and then it's by design. So I know it seems really simple, but I honestly have been working with customers over the last year and a half who are delivering the same thing they delivered 30 years ago. They haven't even adapted in the technology age, let alone the times that we find ourselves in right now. So it's really important to re-observe and to redesign where necessary. And you know, what does this look like from the point of view? Let's re-examine what certainty looks like. You know, first of all, a customer wants to know that you understand their specific issue. The only way you're going to do that is by asking really good questions. So we've got to demonstrate our understanding of their wants and needs. Okay, that's part of it. If we don't show understanding, or if we feed back the wrong information to them or that misunderstanding, we're creating more uncertainty. I mean, if you think of this as a scale, if certainty is a building block and we want to get them to 100%, any one of these aspects will chip away at certainty. And we've got to understand where people make buying decisions. And for different people, that will be in different places based on risk thresholds, okay? So us feeding back to them, we understand your problem, you know, these are the challenges you're faced with. We'll start with that. Second thing is demonstrating expertise. Now, we live in an age of due diligence, right? So every single time somebody is considering working with you, they're probably off there, you know, squirreling on Google, finding your LinkedIn profiles, looking at the content that you put out there, and trying to understand if you know your stuff. A really nice technique here is if you have done the understanding bit well, and you've asked really good questions, when you're in the proposal stage or the nurturing stage with a client, send them that piece, that the one article that addresses their need, and demonstrate your expertise. Again, it's another notch on the way to certainty. It also creates this a reciprocity that actually you'll be their preferred choice because you've gone the extra mile and you've shown a duty of care to them. And the same thing in that due diligence stage, they're going to be looking for things like social proof. They want to know that there's plenty of testimony and that you know, the marketplace agrees with your own hype. They want to see that you're confident in communication. And this is particularly a problem when people are normally asked for price. You know, from a subconscious point of view, if asked for price, there's a pause or a deep intake of breath. What you're doing is creating uncertainty, believe it or not. If your prices are too cheap, you create uncertainty because then there's a value expectation. You know, so the psychology around pricing and how we communicate our pricing, again, is important. It all contributes. The perceived value of your product and service is important. It's not just good for you to know it. It's not good for you to just list features and benefits. Actually, where people understand value is the application of the product or service. Okay, so you need to be able to talk outcome. You need to be able to say, okay, when we do this, typically this is what our clients see. This is the way they operate. These are the time saving. You know, this is what it means to work-life balance. This is what it means to their staff and teams. Whatever, they're talking outcomes. So the perception of value isn't in features and benefits. It's in talking outcome with people. So getting that outcome clear. Being consistent in all your communications. You know, I confess, if there's one thing that's let me down in my earlier years, it's the consistency around communication. And it was through client and customer feedback that I learned to make sure that the discipline of being responsive, etc., really mattered. If you're inconsistent or you don't reply in a timely manner, it really takes a dent on certainty. Whether you've got any money back guarantees or product guarantees, they all help, especially if they're not just done in the kind of cavalier, churlish way that we see lots of knowledgepreneurs providing today. If you've got it, we firmly believe in giving people the opportunity to have a test drive with you. Now, a test drive might be at the first rung on your product staircase. It might just be the thing that allows them just to see if there's a chemistry match. I can tell you categorically, all of the people that work with us in Hive Mind, whether on the Accelerator or in our mastermind group, all of them come through a test drive first. And for us, a test drive is a one-to-one session on Zoom where we take the time to understand the needs and add some value. So they get to see if there's chemistry, if there's a values match, and it's only then do people then decide to take the next step to us. I mean, our Accelerator is not a small investment. It's several £1,000s and it's an intensive 8 weeks actually completely restructuring the business. Last year, not a single person came on our Accelerator that didn't need at least some sort of one-to-one test drive in advance. So we know that we've factored that into our nurture process and into our model because we know it's important. You know, all of these usual things, a conviction, etc. But the attitude to risk your client has will ultimately dictate at which stage in your nurturing process they decide to go. And the key thing for you is about how you design a communication strategy that talks to all of these points, right? So initially, when we're looking at even just a relevance match, we've got to be maybe delivering some content. When they first get in touch with us, we're looking at how we get their attention. That is how we engage. Once we've engaged about how we nurture the relationship, then it's taking them over the line and creating ultimately advocacy. Now, if this rings true to you, I encourage you to stop it right now and try and sort it out. The vast majority of people do all of that loving and all of that extra effort in that engagement stroke nurture stage. And once somebody becomes a customer, they don't give them the same love. A BBX member who I'm really fond of, in fact, best friends with, is a guy called Barnaby Winter. And he doesn't talk about customers. He talks about paying prospects. because the sentiment there is that you always give people the same amount of love, and especially when they actually get over the line and become your customer, you've still got to talk to them, look after them, and be as attentive as you were when you just simply wanted the business. So, this is a big subject to cover in the short period of time we have, but the point is thinking about the psychology of the journey when people are going through these stages with you. Let's come to the presentation of the seller. So, what's important for us is to obviously have a decent, consistent marketing strategy, one which actually demonstrates our values. And there's not enough businesses have taken value seriously in an age when certainly younger demographics are coming through wanting conscious capitalism type of agendas. They want to see the values of an organization. And an enlightened organization understands this. They don't just put values on the front of their website. They live and breathe by them. They recruit by them. And guess what? If you recruit by those values, you create a culture that lives those values. If that's your cultural experience, it becomes your customer experience and ultimately your brand experience. So creating, understanding your values and creating your values is massively important, but then being able to communicate them and match with people based on those values is really important. The way you dress, the imagery on your website, the clarity in the words that you use on your website are all important when it comes to certainty. The reputation that you have and the testimony that you create all contribute to certainty. Your authority on a subject all contributes, right? Because what we're trying to create is credibility for our marketplace. And in times where actually the context of our marketplace isn't consistent, especially if through COVID times you've now been able to deliver and engage people internationally rather just in the UK, this is a consideration for you. I mean, when Warren and I got together just before lockdown, what we were absolutely anticipating for Hive Mind was that we would be UK-centric in 5-star hotels, working with people face-to-face. And of course, lockdown happened, we had to adapt. Well, actually last year, we've worked with over 120 people in 14 different countries, and we've adapted, but we have to understand that everybody that we speak to has a different context. And actually, the whole group is richer for that. So kind of embracing diversity is one thing, but when it comes to that nurturing stage in your communication, if you are talking with one tone of voice, you're not speaking to everybody. We have an age now where we get to personalize our message and we get to understand the individual context. So I really urge you to think about what that looks like in your particular audience. You see, we help people create competitive advantage, and this is our competitive advantage model. And most people are very surface level in their marketing. And let's face it, for most people who go off and start their own business, they do so because they've either got a core competency or a core passion, which has taken them to go and start their business. But they don't necessarily know how to run the operational processes around that passion. They don't necessarily know how to market and sell that passion. And so we're in the business of helping people position what they do so they get decent penetration and build a good, profitable business. And we're about getting beyond the surface level stuff down to that kind of core where you really have competitive advantage and become the go-to person. And all of these play a part in that. Okay, and all of these contribute towards certainty. So, market forces have had an impact on buying decisions, coming back full circle to what I started with. Economic certainty has had an impact. Even people who have accessed governmental funding over the last year haven't necessarily wanted to spend it because they have just been, how bad is this going to get? I need to have a fallback fund in order to adapt should the market dictate it. They're potentially looking at alternative solutions. They'll have their own opinions, but they'll also have all of those opinions of the people around them, their key stakeholders, from shareholders, other directors, even staff and other customers, if they're going to be impacted by any kind of change affected by your product or service. So all of these are factors. And the key for us is how we come out of lockdown and create momentum in this time of apathy, how we create certainty in the minds of people in this time of apathy. So I just want to stop for a moment. And let me just find the video screen of you all. And I know not everybody's on camera, but I'd like to, first of all, invite any questions before I go on to just some closing remarks around how we can create certainty in a time of apathy. So has anybody got a question they want to ask based on what I've talked about so far? Or even an example of your own marketplace that you might want a bit of insight. And by the way, Hive Mind thinking is about where other people get to contribute ideas too. So don't feel you need to ask a question. If you want to share an experience, I'm also quite open to that.
Just while people are doing that, Jackie, King, yes, the session will be available as a replay.
Crikey, wants to put up with me twice. That's brave.
Nothing like popularity, Warren.
No questions? Was there any in the chat, John? Because I can't see the chat while I'm presenting. So is anything that I need to be aware of before we move on?
It's not a question.
It's empty.
Yeah. It's more an observation. I mean, I think what you're putting down there makes so much sense because there is the psychology of it. Because if you, yeah, I'm just saying thank you. And that's why I want to see it again so I can take it in a bit more.
So Jackie, it's a really interesting point, and I want to respond. And the point is that most of us get stuck in the day-to-day, right? We don't start to think a little bit deeper around the reason why people make decisions today. And that's changed. The context of every single consumer decision has changed over the last couple of years. I would argue it's been steadily changing for the last 30 years, but it's definitely changed in the last couple of years. And unless we've learned to adapt the way that we present ourselves to the world, we will potentially be missing out. I would also come back to a point around simplicity, right? It's most of us tend to want to throw everything at a prospect. You know, we do this, and need to do this, and these are the benefits. When actually they had one key requirement, okay? And if we addressed that one key requirement, they could have been in a buy decision. When we give people too much choice, when we become more complex in our positioning, what we create is confusion, and a confused mind never buys. Okay, so think of it from a restaurant. I'll give you a restaurant example. You turn up to a restaurant and you're looking to buy a nice meal with your family, and somebody presents you with a 40-page menu, and you've suddenly got lots and lots of choice, and now you're agonizing over your choice because there's actually 6 different things that you really want to eat. And you don't want to make the wrong decision. So, you know, if a waiter or waitress walks by with a tray of food, you're looking over onto the food, and it's because we all like our expectations to be managed, right? So we want to make the right choice. So actually, if somebody presents me with a menu with just 6 choices, I'm happier because typically there'll be one that stands out that I know I'll enjoy, but I have then less anxiety about whether I've made the right choice. So try and simplify your propositions, try and bring them back down to, you know, the kind of key things that you deliver. There might be a little bit of personalization and adaptation within that, but the more we can simplify, the less anxiety we're going to create in the prospective buyer's mind, and therefore more certainty. Okay, so we've got to simplify our communication and simplify our propositions, but it comes down to understanding the pain and the gain of our marketplace.
Thank you.
And I couldn't agree more there, Warren, because a confused person will think about it.
Absolutely. And what we're trying to do is to create the conditions where people buy, okay? And so it's a journey that we lead people on. We're leading the thought process. So, and by the way, all of this is on the understanding that we know we're a good fit for the customer, right? So this is done with the right integrity, but we're leading the thought process. So they're in a position where they want to buy from us. That's really what modern day selling is all about, creating certainty from that perspective.
Thank you for all the information. It's I find that with my actual business, I've given you the website. It's some of the parts need to be like a jigsaw and fit together. So I need to sometimes put the information on that link everything together. So it's more than one item, even though I'm trying to make it one item.
So the biggest thing that you can try and do today is invite the conversation, right? And not necessarily bombard people with too much information. So for example, if you've got a website with lots of propositions and lots of information, what you can be doing is causing consideration or confusion before they even have a chance to have a conversation with you. So the best thing you can do is even simplify your messaging on your website, but invite engagement. Because when people engage with you, it's the opportunity to build the rapport to ask contextualizing questions, and then just give them the information that really matters to them.
Yeah, I have actually gone onto my website and have simplified it. So it's a front page is just mainly the information of what the panel is, and then after that, future things on later on. But it's not all available. But even though that everyone wants everything available, it's not available at the moment. So I'm just trying to concentrate on one item.
So and I would go further and say, don't just concentrate on the item, concentrate on getting them to a conversation. You know, because in the conversation, that's essentially your test drive. That's where you have a potential values match. It's where they get to understand what you stand for, and they'll be reassured by that if the values match, and I presume that they will, and they do. So the idea is get people to test drive as quickly as possible. How are we doing for time? We have got just under 10 minutes. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We'll come back to a bit of a conversation if we've got time at the end. Just want to talk about what we can do to combat some of this apathy we find today and find a little bit more certainty. So let's just address what apathy actually is. And you know, just show of hands actually before I go on to this. How many people have been feeling a little bit apathetic themselves and have maybe noticed it in their own marketplace? You know, people are slower to respond to emails. People perhaps aren't picking up the mobile phones like they used to before. Maybe you've got less engagement on your social posts on LinkedIn and Facebook. All of those are true for me, okay? All of those are true for me, as both a consumer and as somebody who markets themselves. Okay, so
there was a lot of apathy just there, Warren. I couldn't see too many hands come up.
Yeah, I saw them coming up and down as I was saying different things, but maybe there was apathy there too, which is quite funny and well pointed out, John. And so, you know, this is something which we've got to do. We've got to get people re-excited about their own businesses as well as our products and services, right? And so we can start to match those stats that I shared earlier on. Ultimately, people are positive. They're more positive than they've been for the last couple of years. In some cases, they're more positive than they've been for the last 20 years. And I think when you're hit with adversity, there's a kind of stoic Dunkirk spirit, which makes us want to come out and be fighting. I think some of that's at play too. But this is the apathy we find ourselves in right now. And the question is, what can we do about it? And so the first thing is about controlling the controllables, right? There are some things that your marketplace, your existing customers, or your live prospects right now are thinking and feeling. And unless you understand what they are, don't obsess about. Best thing that you can do is engage with them and ask those questions. But what you can be doing from your point of view is making sure that you've looked at your value proposition and made sure it stayed relevant in these times of change. That's in your control. You can look at the way that you position yourself. You can simplify, but you can also talk values. You can also talk solutions. You can demonstrate your understanding of the needs of your marketplace right now. All of these are factors in your control when it comes to communication. So focus on the controllables. In the last recession, there's a whole load of data and research which shows how most people kind of combated it. And there was a whole load of people who battened down the hatches and went really defensive. And what that means is they stopped any what they perceived to be unnecessary spending. That includes marketing. And they weren't the people who succeeded in the last recession. There were the people who went utterly on the offense. So what they did was they massively invested in change and in marketing. They weren't the people who really won in the last recession. The people who won are the people who made sensible defensive decisions and sensible offensive decisions. So they had a little bit of balance with those two. They made sure they understood which marketing was going to work for them. They understood which cost savings were not necessarily going to impact the operational delivery of their products and services. So right now, if you're feeling the pinch, or even if your marketplace is, one of the things in our control is to make those sensible decisions around offense and defense. Okay, and this is where BBX plays a critical factor. In our business, we spend really wisely on BBX, and we make sure wherever we can release cash flow by making those sensible decisions. We do. BBX is a great defensive solution, but it's also a good offensive solution. So, you know, all of the marketeers, the SEO people, the website people, they're the people to potentially engage with and get that balance right in these times. Get support. You know, if you're working in isolation and doing things on your own, now is the time to find a support community. Whether that's just joining a networking group who are like-minded, or whether it's doing even more, you know, coming and being part of mastermind groups, which are much more intensive relationships, but a much deeper level of support for each other. These are things that you can do that are in your control right now. And be active in those communities. You know, it's been a lot of working in isolation. It's really good to know that you've got people who've got your back in these times too. And actually, what you'd be surprised is just how much opportunity that creates. Not only collaboration within the community, but advocacy, referrals to their marketplace, that type of thing. Get personal. Okay, if you have just been talking features and benefits for the last couple of years, now is the time to remember the word humanification. Now is the time to actually start creating relationships, figuring ways to actually engage with your marketplace and talk to the demographic, psychographic, and firmographic needs of your audience. Just to explain the three things. Demography is around things like gender, sex, geographical location, all those kind of tangible facts and figures. Psychographics is about attitudes, so the way that people think and the behaviors that they have. And some of you might have a really broad marketplace that you serve from a demographic point of view, but you might find there's a particular attitude or instinct that your audience demonstrates on a regular basis, and therefore our marketing needs to reflect the psychographics. Okay, and firmographics is the same thing as demographics, but company data as opposed to person data. But when it comes to getting personal, we're really interested in the demography and psychography in order to make sure that we're actually talking to the audience, to your audience, and addressing their needs and creating relationships with them. Okay, and if from a values point of view you're interested, we have a giveaway on our website, which is 500 core values. What I suggest you do, if you want it, just go onto the website. A pop-up will appear quite quickly, but you can just go in and register for the PDF. And I would suggest that with a good glass of Malbec or whatever your tipple is, you sit and just read through them and just highlight the words that really stand out on the page. Because if you can start to really understand what you stand for, and even in a business context, I would try and whittle that down to about the 5 to 8, which you might want to actually use as part of a brand guidelines and make sure that you're communicating across all of your business communications. We have something called a congruence test. Within our own business, we have our 5 main values on the front of the website. But every single time we create an article or a newsletter or anything like that, we just go and make sure that it's living and breathing our values. And there's a consistency with how we communicate ourselves. And because of that, we create more and more certainty in the mind's eye of our prospect, because we become a known quantity. They know what they're going to get from us. We're managing their expectations at all times. Is that all clear? And the identity aspect, in these current times, you might just want to think about how you do go and reimagine who you are and what you do. So whether that's rediscovering your passions, and looking at your kind of purpose, whether that's reinventing your brand, giving it a facelift and making sure it's kind of relevant right now, whether it's gives you something exciting to go to the marketplace with, a relaunch, another chance to engage with the people that you've talked to past and present over the last 20 odd years. All of this is within your power, but it's about looking at your identity. This is the identity model that we work with. We run a one-day identity workshop actually, once a month. And this is the model that we work to. We take people particularly through these first 3 sectors around self, around the purpose, values, and objectives. And it's amazing what business transformation happens just spending a day exploring these things for yourself, but certainly the clarity in communicating your proposition. If any of you are interested in our identity workshop, it's available on BBX. We run it once a month. This is essentially what happens. The recording of the day is available. I only work with groups of 10 people maximum, because it is about getting to know everybody on the call and to be able to provide contextual information. That's essentially what you get. Not big sales pitch, comes with a big workbook. I can show you testimonials, but listen, if you're interested, go and have a look at our website, where there is a testimonials page, and you can sort of read what other people have to say about the stuff that we do. And you know, just to show that I mean what I say, these are the values on front of our website that we live and breathe by. We make sure all of the things that we do factor to these. The next workshop is on the 26th of July, 197 plus VAT. Happy to take on BBX. Today is not really about a sales pitch. I wanted to talk certainty with you, so I'm more than happy to take any further questions or challenges. Even if you vehemently disagree with anything I've said, now is your time and now is your chance. If you just want to touch base with me after today, I'm more than happy to share my slides, the books, the videos available through BBX, but I'm also more than happy to have a conversation with you about how we might be able to help you moving forward. Any questions?
Warren, I've got a quick question. 20 years ago, there were 3.5 million businesses in the UK. There are 6 million now. So 40% of the businesses are very young, very small, one-man bands, as it were. So if you could give one tip, Warren, to any smaller business out there, even someone employing up to 4 or 5 staff, what would be the number one thing, the action plan that you would recommend that they take away from this call today?
Can I give you more than one thing? Because that's a bit restrictive for me on that one. Listen, there are more businesses starting, and that's because we have cultivated an entrepreneurial mindset in youth, right? So there are more people starting businesses under 20 years old than ever before. And get this, there are more people who have faced redundancy and are starting businesses post 52, right? So lots and lots of people starting up. And actually, most futurists will tell you over the next 25 years, we are becoming more and more portfolio careered. And that means more than one income stream from more than one business interest. In fact, how many people here have more than one business interest? Yeah, most of us, right? So this whole idea of portfolio careers is a thing, and every single thing that you position has to have the same clarity and work towards certainty. And that means also not mixing the messages, right? So it's a minefield right now. And if there's 6 million businesses where there was previously 3 million, and by the way, whilst the volume of businesses has expanded, the percentage of those haven't really changed, right? It's still 0.6% of businesses are the small to medium, 50 to 250 staff, and just 0.1% of them are corporates with 250 plus. Vast majority are one-man bands or 1 to 5 staff, right? Vast majority. And so if you're a one-man band suddenly now competing in a more competitive marketplace where the playing field has been leveled with things like social media, it has never been more important for you to start to take your personal brand a bit more seriously, your positioning and messaging, and understand that customer acquisition journey that you take people on. How do you create the conditions where people make buying decisions? Okay, so it's not just a case now of aggressively waiting for the phone to ring, to quote Brad Burton. It's about putting strategies in place which drive inquiry, which drive engagement, which start relationships, because we live in a relationship economy today, and it's about the conversations you're having with your prospective marketplace.
Thanks, Warren. And Warren could have about 100 sessions on this, and he'd speak with authority on all of them. I've just put up in the links for everybody. Anybody that was looking for his Thought Leaders Blueprint site, I've put a link in there to Warren's website. I've also put a link in there to his best-selling, and I mean a proper best-selling book on Amazon and other places, in bookstores and whatnot. On influence. So anybody that wants to grab a copy of that. Warren, is no wonder that Warren's one of the most sought after speakers when we have real shows in terms of in actual locations. Warren, it's been our absolute pleasure to have us on the show today. If anybody's got any burning questions, please link in with Warren. He's a good guy and happy to connect with you guys. So Warren, on behalf of the group, I thank you very much for your contribution today.
Thanks for having me, John. Real pleasure to see everybody. Thanks for your participation too. Take care.
Just before everybody goes, I've just put a link up to the next speaker, Bob Hayward. Bob I've known for 15 years, and he's going to be doing some other things on selling, on how to increase your sales and also increase the price that you get from selling. So continuing.
I would absolutely advocate Bob, by the way. I've known Bob for a similar amount of time. He's awesome at what he does. So Bob's session's great. I also look out for Dave Plunkett later on today, who's an ex-business partner of mine and a brilliant guy on partnerships. And partnership strategies could be a great way to go to market for you too.
And just
Warren,
one,
is the a membership on BBX?
everything.
Membership to Hive Mind, you mean?
Yeah.
If you're interested, absolutely we can entertain that. But if you're interested, let's have a conversation and make sure we're a good match for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Warren, and I hope everybody got some benefit from that session. And there are still, I don't know, 15 more to go, as well as interviews and whatnot going around the world. So again, thank you, Warren Cass, for your input today, and thank you all for attendance. If you like the show, go away and share it and tell everybody that this is a great show. If you don't like it, come and just give me a private message and we can iron out any issue. So thank you, everybody, for your attendance.
It's been emotional.
As always, as usual.